Hey, this is Eric from Catching Light.
Hey, this is Hemp.
Hey, this is Glenn.
Hi, I'm Steve-O.
Hey, this is Drew Hines with Hindsight Imagery.
This is Matt Callahan at Digimatty Photographic Services.
Hey, this is Jason, and welcome to Tales from the Pit. Hello and welcome back to Tales from the Pit, the behind the lens access for concerts and photography. Today, we have a brand new guest. His name is Erik Rogers. He's been the sound for so many bands such as Godsmack, Bush, Avenged Sevenfold, so many bands. Erik, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, how are you guys?
Good. There we go. Well, thank you. Thank you. So, we'll get started and talk about a lot of your stuff. We've actually been to shows with you, and you've been to our venue, I believe, probably several times. I'm assuming in Bank of New Hampshire Pavilion.
Oh my God, we were with Dustin Lynch. I think we did 2 or 3 years in a row there with Luke Bryan, and it was always like a night back to back to back.
Oh yeah. Yeah, nice. Yeah, so this is awesome to see, and hopefully we'll see you in person here pretty soon. But let's kind of go back and talk about how you got started in the industry. What was what led you into this direction?
It's funny. Nobody's ever asked me what led me into this direction. I don't know. I know that I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. when I had just graduated high school and I went to college, and I thought I wanted to be a teacher, and it turns out I don't like other people's kids. And I have kids of my own, and it kind of still holds true that I don't like other people's. And I'm a really bad guitar player, and I was like noodling around in punk and metal bands and just not going anywhere. It was kind of shitty. And the girl I was dating at the time, and I was 20, her best friend's ex-husband was the drummer for like the most popular cover band in my hometown. And this was in the late 90s. So these guys, I shit you not, were drawing like 1,000 people a night and getting paid $2,500 a night to play fucking Blister in the Sun and all that, 90s douche rock stuff. And it was just the scene. It was the local music scene, and I was just looking for something to do. And through meeting people and hanging out and being kind of annoying, I ended up being that kid who was getting paid $50 a night to help carry stuff and drink before I was old enough to drink.
Getting behind the scenes, all that fun stuff. That's cool.
And that was it. That was really it. It was just kind of fell into it. I didn't know for years and years and years that this was a thing. Like I didn't understand that bands carried engineers or lighting people or anything. I always thought it was like local crew. So I thought it was just like a stagehand thing. I'm like, that's not my gig. This is just going to be fun. It wasn't until years later that I realized that this is actually a highly skilled and sought after trade, like craft.
Yeah, no kidding. Where did you grow up? What area were you from?
I grew up in around Dayton, Ohio, actually.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, awesome. So you went from, just kind of tagging around, helping out with bands and stuff like that. What gets you into the door of an actual touring band? How does that work?
At one point when I finally learned that this was a thing, I sent whatever resume I had. At the time I was working for the local AM talk radio station as the overnight mixer, producer, board operator, working for a local sound company. And I had made a resume of all the local gigs we did between like the convention center things and all the churches and the raves and like all the stuff that I thought was pretty impressive. And I sent it to every touring sound company, the Sound Images, the Clairs. I sent it to everybody. And the only person who answered me was Paul Owen. at Thunder Audio, and they're 4 hours north of me in Detroit from when I lived in Ohio. And I get this phone call, and it's funny because he's got a very heavy British accent, and he talks really fast, and it was kind of hard to understand him over the phone. And what I got out of it was like, be here tomorrow at noon. And next thing I know, I'm getting in my car, I'm driving 4 hours for a 5-minute job interview and getting thrown at front of house at Bonnaroo. It's a music festival in Tennessee, and told it was a test and I would either sink or swim.
So that's a
pressure,
huge festival on all day,
huh?
like an all multi-band all day festival, and you're running front of house.
Yeah, he set me up, and I was the daytime systems engineer. So at one of the tent stages. So at any point, I probably from, I guess what, noon till 9 p.m. was my shift. And just out front, systems is like being the systems engineer, taking care of the PA, taking care of all the guest engineers, mixing whatever bands didn't have anybody, and having every eye in the company on me, reporting back to the boss of whether or not I suck.
Oh my
Dude, that's nerve-wracking.
I didn't suck. I went straight from that, and I got the call that week on my first gig there to go straight to New York City to do the same thing for the Metropolitan Opera House does. I don't know if they still do it. It was one of the coolest gigs I still have ever done. It was one of like my first major ones. Was the Met in the Park in Brooklyn, and it's like if you've ever been there, the park is like miles long and narrow. It's like football fields lined up end to end, and just tons of PA on delay rings and video screens, so the opera could play, and you could be immersed in music at the wine and cheese level.
Really? That's crazy. So
I went from hippies to opera and kind of snowballed.
that's pretty unique, but interesting. I bet you it was an interesting crowd mix too. When you're saying you're an audio engineer for those two type of gigs, you kind of gave some brief description of what you're doing, but are you physically mixing the actual band? Are you doing like the sound checks?
At that stage, no, I wasn't. I was what was called a systems engineer, a systems tech.
Okay.
And that job is, I come in every day if it's a touring gig or for whatever event, and I take measurements of the room and analyze where, or ascertain where I'm going to hang the PA system to get it to cover the entire audience. Then I deploy it, or I have stagehands help me deploy it. Then I tune the system. Then I facilitate. There is a primary mixing console there, but if there's guest engineers that bring their own desk in, it's helping them get their band in and out of the PA system and taking care of that all day.
Gotcha.
And making sure they don't blow it up.
Yeah. What year was this around?
That would have been 2008.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. So from there, you do those two major mods. I mean, you're throwing way deep in the deep end there. Where does that lead?
It's funny. That led to like a couple of, I don't know how you call it, maybe off Broadway or Broadway review, like theatrical things where it was 2 shows a day. There's a matinee and an evening show, and it was doing all of like, one of them was Christmas, so it was like a bunch of Christmas stuff with a bunch of set pieces, and then another one was the ABBA musical Mamma Mia. It was an off Broadway version of that, where we just brought that to these Midwestern communities that were like B and C markets. And that was, I mean, everything's a test, right? That was one of those, can I handle myself in an awkward, weird situation? And just about the time I got back from that, I was told I was going out as the systems tech for Avenged Sevenfold.
Wow.
And doing the Avenged Sevenfold run led to me ending up mixing Avenged Sevenfold when I was filling in for their engineer who had to take a leave of absence.
So when you jump on to Avenged Sevenfold, are you doing a full tour with them, or is that only for certain gigs, or what?
No, I did a full tour. I did. We had like 2 days of rehearsal in Salt Lake City, Was it Salt Lake City? Yeah, Salt Lake City. And then like 6 or 8 months straight out touring. Then we were home for a little while, and then I got the phone call that was my friend Nigel, I made friends with this guy Nigel Paul, who was the engineer for Avenged at the time. Yeah. And he told me that he couldn't go out. He wanted me to take over the next leg. So next thing I know, I'm mixing Avenged in the summer of 2009, and my first gig with them was this big festival called Rock on the Range. I already known the band and the guys. I was very familiar with the show, but all of a sudden now, instead of in like the co-pilot seat, I'm in the captain's chair at this point. And so here's a stadium full of stuff, and that was cool. Then we did an amphitheater show with Korn, and then we're on an airplane and we're playing with Metallica in Mexico City.
Holy smokes, dude. That's huge.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
What was that like first time touring with Avenged? Was that your first sort of tour?
No, my first tour was actually a few years earlier. Before I had gotten the gig with Thunder Audio, I had been kind of dipping my toes in. I did monitors, and I learned I'm not the monitor engineer. I've only done monitors a very scant handful of times, and it's not for me. I'm not the right guy for that. But
for people who don't know, what is monitors?
Okay, so a front of house engineer mixes the sound that the audience hears. The monitor engineer mixes the sound that the band hears. So out at front of house, I mix music for me, and the artists trust that I'm translating what they're doing off the stage to 20, 30, 40,000 people, and that I have better taste in music than those 40,000 people. When you're a monitor engineer, you're mixing individually for everybody in the band, and you have to anticipate what they want before they want it and be able to communicate with them when they can't communicate with you.
Right. Like if I'm the singer or something like that, I'm probably going to want my vocals way over the guitar player or vice versa or something like that.
Exactly. And you might want to change. You might hear your vocal different, or the guitar player might have turned up and now you can't hear it. But at the same time, the guitar player wants to have something else. And they're both trying to get your attention without noticing or having the crowd notice that they're getting your attention. And they have this split second to get out all their frustrations as to what's wrong. And it usually ends up with shit getting thrown.
Yeah, I've seen some real bad monitor. There is a very famous 80s metal band or rock band where the lead singer is still carrying on that band with a whole different band, except for the drummer's the same. And recently, like in 2019, I saw him do a show and he flipped out on the monitor person, like nasty, like was going to get in a fight with the monitoring person. But yeah, so go ahead.
I'll say if you look up on YouTube and it's okay to talk about it now, I guess enough time has passed, but just look up Eddie Van Halen throws speaker.
Oh, geez.
And there was this point, and the reason it's okay to talk about this now is I believe his guitar tech just did an interview about this specific incident where it was like Eddie was, his guitar was out of tune, or something was weird, like he was off and the rest of the band wasn't, or however the story goes. But he ultimately took it out on the monitor guy. He's trying to play at the same time. He's reaching down and picking up the monitor speaker on stage and trying to throw it. And these things, this was in like the early 2000s. So that thing had to have weighed 60, 70 pounds. Wow. So he's got his fret hand. He's still doing this shit with his right hand, and he's trying to throw a speaker, and it's still plugged in. So it's not going anywhere, and he's getting more and more frustrated at it.
Are you like when you're monitor guy, you like side stage? Is that where you are positioned?
Yeah, when you're off to the side of the stage, exactly.
Yep. So you did all right. So you did monitoring for a band for a period of time.
I did monitors on a hip hop festival. It was
oh my god,
thing called Rock the Bells with Rage Against the Machine and Wu-Tang Clan were the headliners, and I did monitors for like 6 hours straight on the side stage of all these independent hip hop artists, and it was uneventful. I mean, it was fine. It was just make it loud and duck.
Wow.
And okay. From that, I met in Scottsdale, Arizona, this amphitheater, a gentleman called Jim Jorgensen, who he lives in Arizona, and he was working for the local sound company that provided whatever sound system that day. But he also turns out that he is a really talented touring audio guy. We just traded information, and I'm just this kid who's friendly and maybe he saw potential. I don't know. But next thing I know, I finished the hip hop tour, and I just out of the blue, I texted him like, hey, and thanked him, like, because that day stood out to me. And he asked me what I was doing that summer. And I said, I don't know. I hadn't booked the gig yet. And I was out as his assistant on Stevie Wonder.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
No kidding. Was that the...
That was Stevie Wonder was my first taste of like large scale
touring. Yeah.
Yeah. Like this is the way it's supposed to be touring. So I did a hip hop tour, Stevie Wonder, all the rest of the stuff.
Yeah. What was touring like with, I mean, so you're on a tour bus with a ton of other crew members going from city to city, basically?
Yeah.
And you're not with the band. The band has their own tour bus. You're with the crew members, right?
Yeah. Now it's funny because I started off on relatively the large scale touring. I didn't get down to the one bus tour with the band till years later. So like on Stevie, I think we're 4 buses deep. On Avenged, I know there were 3. I lost count for the rest of them. It wasn't until I got to, I think it was like Saving Abel or some Apocalyptica, that it was all of a sudden I realized, wow, the band rides on the same bus as the rest of us.
And how many people are like on a band, like 12 or something like that?
A full bus is 12. The worst I've ever been on was 13, where they had somebody on the back lounge. But more recently, as you get older, I find you get taken better care of. My bus on Godsmack, there were only 9 of us.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
So you go to, so you're running sound, you're running front of house for Avenged Sevenfold with Metallica?
Yes.
And you're strictly just doing Avenge's front of house, right?
Just Avenged front of house, yeah. Big Mick mixes Metallica. So my job was literally just to walk in, mix Avenged Sevenfold, and leave.
Wow. And are you guys like sticking around for shows, or are you like catching the bus and getting out to the next show?
Oh, no, we would stick around, especially on those, like those international stuff. There's nowhere else to go.
Right.
And especially in a place like Mexico with an artist like Metallica, you arrive early and leave late because the crowd will stay forever.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get in and out of places, and it's better just to not be around. I mean, I love all the fans, and they've afforded us jobs, but yeah. At the same time, like I can't get anything for you. Those guys have long since best escorted out of here. So, oh
my God. Yeah, no kidding. That must've been a massive, crazy show.
It was a baseball stadium.
Gee whiz. Yeah, that was awesome. And Avenged is like just kind of getting their peak right there, right? It wasn't.
Yeah, that was, I think, their first like major headline tour. Like earlier that year, the one that I was on, it was a co-headline with Buck Cherry. And then so when they opened up for Metallica, there was only a 30-minute slot. So like they had been the headline band in arenas for a year or so. But you take the biggest, most popular arena band out there that isn't Metallica, and you put them on the stage with Metallica, and it's just and no disrespect to anybody I've ever worked with, but Metallica is just that next level amazing. And and everybody knows it. Like if Metallica calls you to go out and play with them, you're like, yes, please.
Yeah, you do whatever they say.
Yeah.
So where does it go after Avenged 7? That's 2009 you said?
It was 2009. And I stayed, like, I'm a pretty loyal kind of guy. I don't like to turn my back on where I've come from. So I was starting that path where I was half into being independent and halfway still working for the sound company. And when I was at this crossroads where I could have stayed with an artist or stayed with the company, and the company asked me to stay, and it didn't take me, it was nothing. It's like, okay, they asked me to stay, they got me this far, so obviously it can take me a lot farther. So instead of staying on a different path, I ended up doing a bunch of systems work with Thunder Audio, and I went out with Deep Purple, Taylor Swift. I did the inauguration, not the inauguration itself, that's Maryland Sound. I did the inaugural ball.
Yep.
I did a bunch of Obama campaign events, and then did some Romney campaign events. I mean, I've done some pretty amazing shows just with Thunder Audio, like opportunities to see things and experience things.
And for those events, are you just making sure the mic's working, making sure the PA's?
Yeah, I just make sure that my job, essentially as a systems engineer, if I had to boil it down to somebody who doesn't speak audio, my job is to make sure that every seat in the venue has the best or the same experience acoustically, can hear everything intelligibly and understand it, and to experience the music as transparently as possible.
Yep. That's awesome.
How do you go from Metallica and Avenged to Obama and Romney? And even that, you talk about the polarization of politics in America now. That's pretty opposite ends of the spectrum. But how do you go from one end of that to the other?
Well, because you can't outvote physics. And you can't deny physics. It's just physics is physics. So, and acoustics is acoustics. So whether it's a metal band coming out of the PA system or a new healthcare plan coming out, it's still coming out of a PA system, and it's still a room full of people that are looking to absorb the information. Whether or not I give a shit about the information coming out of the speakers is not up to anybody to know.
Good point.
Were you running sound for Romney when he did that? Woo! Wasn't him that did that thing? That
wasn't Romney. That was oh shit. What was that guy?
Who was that?
That was up here. Yeah.
He was Dean Howard Dean.
Howard, yeah.
Dean.
Okay. Yeah.
Because he was the front runner when it was Bush and Kerry.
Yeah.
And then he had that freak out on stage, and it cost him the election. Imagine like that was the worst freak out in 2004. He didn't even say fuck.
Yeah. So you did, luckily you did the, presidential stuff prior to these presidents, because I've seen some very nasty recent presidential stuff with sound men, with sound persons and complaints and stuff like that.
Well, with the president himself, once you are a president, the White House Communications Department handles all of your audio, and they advance it. So technically, there's a job description out there as presidential front of house guy. And I've met the White House communications people, and they literally, it's the coolest white glove gig ever. Like, they don't show up until maybe 10 minutes before the president shows up, and they just walk out, and they don't sound check shit. You've already sound checked everything. They literally, their job is to be escorted by a Secret Service agent to find out what fader belongs to the president and to push that fader.
Yeah.
And that's it. So like the whole event leading up to that and the whole event after that, because there's all kinds of stuff you don't see on TV, and there's rock bands and speeches and all this shit. You don't see any of that on TV because, the guy in office is the only thing that matters. But his front of house guy's there for like the duration of the speech plus 10 minutes.
That's awesome.
Now for campaign events, if you're running, it's just I don't know. I've never met a campaign engineer before, but I know that I took care of both candidates at different events during the course of the campaign, as the vendor. And it was interesting. President Obama really knew how to use a mic, and this was when he was running. He actually knew how to get up on a mic and use a mic and organize. And maybe it comes from the organizing thing where he knew how to just rile people up. Romney was a lot more subdued and challenging. I mean, he was an old guy who talked into a microphone like an old guy.
Yeah. So you got to kind of ride that gain back and forth, all that stuff. Yeah. So is that a tour? I mean, is that like you're going from town to town for that, or was that just certain events?
It was just certain events, and it was because and I don't know how the campaigns do it, but I know that somebody behind the scenes at the sound company is working with the campaign to try to book these events. But there's more sound companies around the country. And at some point they look at, the cost of trucking and flights and all this stuff. So
Right.
the company I was working with, they're based out of Detroit, and they were partnered with a company in DC. So if you draw a triangle from like Detroit to DC, and they had another office in Nashville, they took care of like the radiuses of that area.
Gotcha.
And then, so, I mean, it's not like I got on a plane and took care of, a campaign gig in Denver. There's somebody out there who do that.
Nice. So you go from, so you're looking at 2012, the presidential 2013 inauguration ball, stuff like that. Are you doing, so when you're hired, is it like next Tuesday we got this gig for you, next whatever we got this gig, or how is your schedule structured for that stuff?
Well, it was like, because I was doing that in and out of tour gigs. So like I go out with, say, in 2010, right? I go out with Taylor Swift, and I have been out with Taylor for whatever the duration I run. And I took over for somebody who left the gig. So I did like the last leg of that tour. And then when I got home from that, I was home, which is really funny because I didn't know who she was. Had no fucking idea. I get this phone call, and next thing I know, I was married at the time. I looked at my wife. I'm like, "Who's Taylor Swift?" She's like, "You're kidding, right?" No, I have no idea. But I get home from that, and I was home for a couple of weeks, and next thing you know, I call the shop. I'm like, "Hey, what's coming up?" And they're like, "Oh, well, we're gonna come up." Next thing you know, I'm out as one of the guys, hanging speakers, like just the speaker hanger guy on Metallica for the Australian leg. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go do Metallica because that company handles Metallica. And then I get home, and then how in between those tour gigs is, as long as you're calling and hustling, like, "Hey, what do you got coming up?" And like, "Oh, hey, do you want to go do a presidential gig?" "Yeah, sure. Okay." And so the company is always working, and when you're not on tour, they're cycling their guys in and out of gigs.
So you'll be on the road for 3 or 4 months, and then you'll be home for a week, and then you call in and say, "Hey, I'm ready for whatever's next," or whatever.
Yeah. I'm like, what do you got for me?
Yep.
And then the next thing you know, like, "Hey, I'm ready to get back on the road. What's coming up?" And they would send you out on something else. Next thing you know, I'm doing Rod Stewart, which was pretty rad. And then it was like, "Hey, we're sending you on Deep Purple." I'm like, okay, cool. And there was a time where it was like tour to tour to tour. Like you start planning on your next tour with your next artist with like 3 weeks to go in your current tour. So in one month, got this artist on the brain here, and all of a sudden I'm already planning on what I'm going to do for this one.
Have you had any disasters along the way? Ones that you can recall and say, "Wow, what happened?"
That you can talk about.
Define disaster, and yes. I have. Let's see, I've already told this story in detail in another podcast, but I made a pretty crucial mistake early on at a corporate. It wasn't even a tour. It was just a corporate event in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where I didn't check the power cable that was attached to the motor that pulls the PA up. And there's 7 pins inside of this multi-pin connector, and it had been turned 1/4 turned to the right inside, and all the pins lined up, but basically it arced 240 volts across the 2 hots all the way up the chain and back down, and it had sparked and popped, and the rigger was screaming down. So we disconnected it, and we didn't know until the end of the day when the PA got to the ground that arc had actually cut through all but one of the braids on the steel rope that hangs the speakers from the rafters. So coming down, I realized that instead of having this big bundle of wire, this steel wire holding 5,000 pounds of speakers up, it was one braid of wire. And that was enough to make me really shit myself, and then learn a very valuable lesson about paying attention to the most minute details of a gig.
No kidding.
Incredible.
That's crazy. Yes, that could have been very, very dangerous. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, and then it's that was one of those situations where you learn multiple lessons along the way. Like I ended up writing letters apologizing to riggers and making phone calls and like eating a whole bunch of humble pie after that.
So you go from a lot of these different, I mean, you've jumped on so many tours. Recently, I think the last time you were at our venue was probably Godsmack with Shinedown, I'm assuming.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I was at that show. Did any of you guys shoot that show? I was at that show as a spectator. I don't know if Steve, were you at that show? Wasn't that your show? No. Anyways, yeah, that was an awesome show.
Oh, I think I did.
Did you hemp? Yeah. Anyway, so that was an
I
awesome
shot that
show.
one. Okay. Yeah.
What was that tour like? 'Cause that's a two mega band.
Godsmack Shinedown.
Yeah.
That was talk about heavy hitters, right?
Yeah.
It's like that was just a night where you're from the minute the lights go off, the entertainment doesn't stop. I mean, like those guys are just both bands. It's so professional and so good. It was like I was the systems engineer. I hadn't started mixing Godsmack yet. I was actually the tech when I first started with Godsmack, and it wasn't until 2019 that I started mixing them. So I was crazy lucky on the Shinedown tour. I mixed the opening band, which was Like a Storm.
Oh, Like a Storm. Okay, yep.
And then I took care of the PA. A guy called Tom Abraham was mixing Shinedown at the time, and Scott was mixing Godsmack at the time. So basically, I got paid to turn it up and make bands that I love sound amazing in front of thousands upon thousands of people every night.
Yeah, that's killer.
It was. I mean, I get to work with my friends. I get to get loud. It was the best.
How long were you usually on the road?
My 13-year-old daughter would point out the exact number of days, but it's I'm on the road around about 250, 260 days a year.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
What is that like? Obviously you've got family and you've got kids and stuff like that. What is that like being on the road? Is that sort of how do you deal with children like that? Do you have a lot of Zoom calls or whatever?
I have one. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and we used to do more FaceTimes than we do now, and it's for no other reason that I think I'm not cool anymore.
Yeah, once they hit that teen years, it's a hard. Yeah.
But it's cool. The difference is now is like I'm not cool, but I still do. I'm the keeper of the keys of the iPhone, so like you have to answer when I text. And then I was engaged for the longest time, and my ex had a couple of kids too, and I'm still close with them. So like we still have our family chats and our family texts, and we stay as connected as we can. But the truth is being on tour and being on the road, being separated from your family really does take a toll.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're on the road, you really don't have, I mean, you're basically stuck in this bus. You don't have any escape or anything. When you're on the road, if something were to happen at home, you really don't have much control over anything, right?
You have none. You have no control, and you have to learn how to listen and have a lot of empathy. And I'm really slow on the uptake of that, if we're being completely honest. Because no matter what disaster happens out on the road, at the end of the day, it's just a rock and roll show, and we're going to do it again tomorrow, and the sun will rise and the sun will set. And there's like only a certain amount of things that can go wrong versus having somebody at home and they're taking care of your house and your kid and paying your bills, and they've got their own job and their own shit to deal with, and it's all exploding around them. You really need to, the only thing you can do is listen. You can't fix it. You can't judge it. You can't get mad at it. All you can do is listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, Eric, obviously 2020 has affected probably everybody. And I'm fast forwarding now. You guys came up with HelloooTV. How did that all come up, get going?
HelloooTV came up was when the pandemic hit and all touring gigs were canceled. I had watched the first live stream concert that was a benefit for our industry, for the entertainment industry. So it's like the one that was raising money for Music Cares, so they could give a little bit of relief to all the guys like us. And I mean this lovingly, with no disrespect, but it was not good. It was, you know, artists, like over the top legendary artists playing in their driveway or with filmed by literally an iPhone. So they kind of phoned it in. It was just cheesy and campy and kind of shitty. And I kind of understand that what their concept was they were showing solidarity for all of us that were stuck at home and they're playing from home and all that. And I called Paris. I didn't call her. We were playing Call of Duty in the middle of the night. And I was like, hey, did you see that telethon special thing? She's like, no, why? Like, well, here's a link, watch it. We can do better. And that was what started the whole thing. It was like, well, this production is awful. And these are legendary artists. And if we're going to be in this predicament where we can't take a show there, why don't we make a show that can be taken anywhere or that can be shown anywhere? And that was how we put this thing together.
That's pretty cool. Just prior to that, and we'll talk more about HelloooTV in just a second, but when the pandemic hit, what was your schedule prior to the pandemic? What were you doing when that happened?
I was front of house and tour manager for Saint Asonia. And we were going to do roughly 8 months, I think. We were going to leave in the first week of April to do Canada. Then we would have done another headline run of spring festivals around the country. Then we were out doing direct support for Breaking Benjamin in the US before doing a headline tour of Europe and a headline tour across Russia. Then another Southern European tour, I believe, that had gotten into, I've never been to Israel, and I know Israel was on the list. I was really stoked about that. And then I think, that was it. Then we would have come home and then started this year doing Australia and Japan. And now whatever's left of that has been postponed till God knows when.
Yeah, really, I mean, for those watching, Paris Visone, was our guest several episodes back, and you and Paris have been touring and working together for years now, right?
Yeah, I think I met her the first time on some festival, probably in 2016, with whatever band she was, probably with Godsmack, and I was with somebody. I think I'll have to verify it with her if she even remembers, but I think it was Rocklahoma where I was with Apocalyptica and she was with Godsmack, if I have to remember. But then, that was one of those, you meet somebody on tour, like in a festival, and you forget about it. You become Facebook friends and you never talk again.
Yeah.
And then we ended up starting to work together in the spring of 2018 on Godsmack.
Yep. It must be really hard being on tour and seeing all the constant faces and meeting all the people, and it's just a blur after a while, huh?
Well, I wouldn't say it's hard. What's weird to me is there's been a shift for me. It used to be like, if I remember who you are, it was because of something bad. And I kind of shifted my perspective, and I don't really remember why. Maybe it was just getting older and growing up, but now I don't remember the bad nearly as much as I remember the good. So when I pop around and remember people, like I remember Jason because of the podcast you did with Paris, and then we met again in New Hampshire. Like, I remember the good more than I remember the bad.
Yep. And you guys for that show. So for those watching, Eric Hemp, Glenn, and I shot the Smith Myers Drive-In show in the fall of 2020 during the pandemic, and you guys drove up from Nashville for that?
We drove up. We had driven up from Nashville to Boston because she lives here in Boston.
Oh, right.
And then we were, I think, here for a day, and it was like, hey, let's go see Smith and Myers, because like we were coming up here for something else anyway, and it was like, hey, Smith and Myers are playing in New Hampshire, and it was only like maybe an hour away, hour and a half, and we had done Alan Myers and More, which is Zach Myers' other band. We had shot them earlier in the year for Hello, and then we had shot Smith and Myers for Hello on 4th of July weekend. So it was kind of like hey, let's, this is what we can do, right? We can call Zach and go, hey man, I want to come see your show in New Hampshire. Really? Okay.
It's good to have connections.
Yeah.
So for Hello TV, so you have this idea. How do you pull it all together? How do you get that first gig? How do you get it all started?
The first thing I did was I called, the first person I called was Michael Brammer, who is one of the partners at Special Event Services. And Michael's been a friend of mine for years. They are my vendor for sound, lights, and trucking for Dustin Lynch when I was front of house and PM for Dustin. And then I had brought them in for one leg of a Godsmack tour when when I was mixing Godsmack and we needed supplemental stuff on 7 shows on the East Coast. It's like, who do I call? I call my friend Michael. So he's been a friend for a long time, and Special Event Services is a huge company that has a lot of gear. And I told him my idea. This is all it was. Like, I want to do this. I need a space. How do I do this? And he's like, what do you need? Like, oh, okay, cool. That's great. Let's come up with a list of what I need. And then I called Digico, who's my preferred console. At the time, they were my preferred console, and now they're like my only console because I've got this really awesome relationship with the Digico guys. And I called my rep, Matt Larson. He goes, you also need to talk to Claire. So from that, I called Sean Claire. And so now you have Michael Brammer and Sean Claire, like these two, they're the younger guys, but the next generation owners of production companies in the audio touring world coming together going, hey, this is believing in us because of their relationship with me. So then we called this guy, Ben Jumper, who owns Soundcheck, which is this rehearsal facility in Nashville. And he was kind enough to donate a room. I called my dear friend Roxanne, who's my rep for Audio Technica, and she's taken care of me for years and years and years. And it was, I told her the idea, and she's like, so what do you need? I'm like, I need microphones. And wham, I got 3 Pelican cases full of microphones. Paris called Canon, like, I need cameras. Whammo, here's cameras and lenses and lights. And she has another company, I wish I remembered what they were, but the company that has the big lights for photography, she's got those. And we just called all these people that we've worked with over the years to tell them about this idea, because our idea was at first to take all this sponsorship, have all the industry donate the gear, and have brands like Pepsi and Jägermeister and whatever cover the cost of the show, pay the show, so we could raise money and donate it to Music Cares.
Yeah.
So
nice.
we had all these people rallying behind us to put it together, and then we couldn't book a band. Like, we talked to all these artists, managers, and they were like, oh, that's a great idea. Who do you got coming up first? Like, nobody wanted to be the guinea pig. So I looked through my phone and I remembered that I had tour managed Saving Abel, and I'm still friends with all the guys in Saving Abel. And Jared, who is the former singer of Saving Abel, moved to Nashville, and he's got his own project going on with as a solo country artist. And I called Jared. I'm like, hey, dude, I'm doing this thing. You want to do it? And so now I had a name attached to the show, so then we could take it to all these other artists and go, hey, Jared Weeks from Saving Abel did it. And as soon as somebody goes first, all the other artists are like, well, fuck yeah, I'll do it.
How did you come up with the name Hello TV?
Okay, so the official story, the real story is, I was coming up with some like terrible names for the company. It was like the COVID concert series and all this kitschy shit. And I'm telling Paris about it, and she's like, no, that's wrong. And we have this, our assistant, our band assistant for Godsmack, his name is Festa. His real name is Todd, but he looks like Uncle Fester. Yep. And he's got the catchphrase, and everybody has their own little catchphrases. And Festa, whether he's drunk or sober or whatever, he's like, it's either a creepy like hello, or it's that indignant hello. And I'm rattling off these shitty names to Paris, And she goes, those are terrible. Hello. And we're like, that's it. That's it. That's the name. She's like, what? I'm like, hello. That's the name. She's like Festa? Like, yeah, like Festa. If you look at Paris, she's like on her arm, she's got hello with 3 O's tattooed on her arm. That was because of him, not the company.
Oh, okay.
So,
Sorry.
you know, I live, you know, I register all the things, and next thing you know, we're incorporated as Hello, and we call Festa, and he thinks he's getting a royalty check. I just stopped answering. But fast forward to the Smith and Myers show, where we're reading, we have the artist read these liners like, hi, I'm so-and-so, and you're watching Hello TV. And Brent is reading this thing. He's like, is that hello? And Zach goes, no, it's hello. Brent's like Fester? just like that. It was perfect. It was like it took until the 4th of July, but it all came together.
That is so cool. That's funny. Yeah, and realistically, how perfect it is for you guys, because you have the right connections, the right timing with the pandemic. And, you know, a lot of I said this previously on a few other shows, is like the creativity that came out of this lockdown is kind of really shows you some of the skill sets and some of the abilities and just using your connections and stuff like this. So it's really awesome that you guys could pull this off. And where do people go to watch these shows, and how do these shows work?
Okay, so the shows, it's changed. If you want to see anything that we've done so far, you can go to HelloOOTV.com, which is hello with 3 O's TV.com. And there's a link that says, I think, video portfolio. Or you can go to any of our social media. It's all the same. It's at Hello TV, hello with 3 O's TV. Every show we've done so far is up on our YouTube page. But at the end of last year, we stopped doing the sponsor-driven series, and we've shifted to a paid production model. So now, instead of us just throwing a bone to the industry, we've actually gotten to a point now where artists come in and they pay us for a video, and they can put out a ticketed live stream. We did it with Felix Cavalieri. If you remember Felix Cavalieri and the Rascals from way back in the day, I mean, that was 90 minutes solid of hits that you know every word to. We did a show for him. It was basically his fee covered our production costs, and then we split the ticket cost with him for that. And that was kind of a baby step into doing something for Armed Forces Entertainment, where we did 7 artists in one really long 10-hour day.
Wow.
And so we are now the vendor for Armed Forces Entertainment and USO, because they're not doing anything to bring the troops there. They're going to bring the troops to our studio. So they're just paying for that production. And we have a band Bayside coming up the same way. So we've completely shifted. So you can't see any of that new stuff you'll see the promo for the shows on our socials and our website, but to actually watch any of the shows we have coming up, you'll have to get a ticket.
Gotcha. Those, I will say, the stuff that I've seen first looks fantastic, but also sounds fantastic. Are you doing the sounds, or what's your
100%.
involvement and everything?
That's
What's
me.
that? Yeah, that's you. Yeah, the sound was really, really good, especially on, I forgot the name of the band you just mentioned with all the hits, man, but they sounded fantastic.
Rascals.
Yeah, Rascal, yeah. And, you know, how many people do you guys have working with you?
On any given show, we have 11. So we have, there's me, Paris, up to 6 total camera people, Paris being one of them, monitor engineer, lighting guy, stage manager, hospitality person, and a production assistant, signing people. So we made the environment so it's a band coming in to do a show.
And now, do you see this still going on well after the pandemic's over? And
Absolutely. What we've learned, we've done a lot of research into this, and what we've learned is the artists have been the slowest on the uptake to doing this thing. Live Nation has invested a boatload of money into live streaming ticketing platforms. There's a bunch of venture capital firms that are dumping a shitload of money into it as well. So the tech side of it, on the streaming, the ticketing, the facilitating, They've already seen the future and what it's going to be. So as we start talking with these platforms and we're making partnerships with all these ticketed platforms, we're also talking with labels and we're talking with promoters, and what happens when the first tour back sells out in 2 days and they're only booking 30 shows. The best solution for that is a live stream. After that, like what's going to happen when touring does ramp back up and there's way more bands than there are venues. So the artists that still want to get out new music in a live concert environment have to do something. So this medium, this platform is not going away, and it's only going to develop farther. There's people doing things now like the biggest live stream ever was Travis Scott doing a live stream show in Fortnite. So it was the Travis Scott avatar doing a show for a bunch of people who were avatars inside of a show.
Hey, thanks for watching part 1 of our interview with Erik Rogers. If you want to see more of our guests, check us out on all your favorite podcast locations, on YouTube, and on talesfromthepit.net. Until then, we'll see you next time.